Welcome back. Let's talk about the economy and who better person to have discuss this. And the great friend, Henry Olujimi Boye. It's a pleasure to have him join us this fine morning and look at many of the issues that have deviled the economy and all of that. I start off first with the IMF, International Monetary Fund. Its prognosis about Nigerian economy, where exactly it sees Nigeria for. It's got criticism, it's also got praise for the Nigerian government. I know it's not a body you're particularly fond of. You once said they were responsible for diabolical policies or experimentations we had in the 80s that led us down the road. So tell me, what do you think about the IMF's prognosis about Nigeria's economy?
Thank you. I don't know whether one should even discuss the prescriptions or the suggestions of the IMF to Nigeria. In the past, we have always found that the prescriptions they administered to our economy often turned out against the people. So I am not often too excited to even believe that when they make these prescriptions, they have our interest at heart. So I believe we should, if they were truly sincere, they should have identified the cause of the failure of the Nigerian economy. Because it is not rocket science. But even when this was brought to their attention, the response was that every country has a responsibility for formulating and implementing their own policies. But then you, as IMF, World Bank, you're supposed to guide in the right direction. The right direction is the position where you find unemployment decreasing, you find jobs increasing, you find inflation trending towards best practice of about 2%, so that you can find that cost of funds will become as low as 5 or 6%, and so that the exchange rate of the Naira could also be stronger. I believe that one of the present suggestions of the IMF is that the Naira should be left to float, the issue of multiple exchange rates, and also the idea that you should not be pursuing an expansionary monetary policy, but you should be operating a very tight monetary policy. And the implication of a tight monetary policy is that cost of funds will become much more expensive. Inflation would also may they expect be subdued a little, but the exchange rate would get such a bad beating that at the end of the day, more people would want to, more of our young people would be thinking of taking a jump out of the country in order to, because you find that the value of their income would suddenly become meaningless. Mm-hmm. So I think we give too much respect to what the IMF says with regards to our economy, because at the end of the day, I find it hard to identify any African country that has made good as a result of the adoption of IMF prescriptions.
Mm-hmm. All right, Mr. Boye, why we want to look at what they had said, some people also argued that what did the IMF say that we didn't already know? What did they say about, for instance, the convergence of the foreign exchange? That
convergence?
Like they tried to say that this should be done, but then the argument is we already knew that it wasn't healthy for an economy to have like different foreign exchange rates depending on what it was, what purpose it was, and what the market was. So in other words, they say they had just stated the obvious. But let me come to you on the injection of the CBN into the forex, into the market. Some say we saw the Naira gaining a bit of strength, and the worry, the single worry, is on availability and then sustainability. What are your thoughts on this aspect of the economy?
Thank you very much. You see, there's a lot of ignorance with regards to what determines the exchange rate of the naira. You are made to believe that if you have more dollars, okay, the naira will be stronger. But that historically has not been shown to be true. You suggest, not you, but the public believe that once you throw more dollars into the market, you would have a better naira rate. But this has not been so over the years. I recall that some years back we had reserves in excess of $60 billion, and we were told that those reserves could provide an imports cover of anything even above 20 months. And that's really good because most countries have imports cover for maybe 4, 5, 6 months. We had 20 months and above. The implication of that is that you would expect your exchange rate, the naira, to be much, much stronger, okay? You will also recall that there was a time that the CBN felt they had too much dollars. They started allocating $1 million, could you believe it, to every bureau de change that dared to bid for it. That to me smacks of reckless financial behavior. You cannot identify any responsible first world economy that consciously allocates dollars to bureau de change. But we, at the time, we gave licenses to about 3,000 bureau de change, and you could imagine, I think between 2006 and 2007 or something like that, the bureau de change were receiving more allocations than the real sector. Despite the recognition that the major patrons of the bureau de change, you have heard of people stealing billions of naira and taking it abroad. How do you think they took it abroad? They didn't carry naira abroad. The facility provided by the central bank to make dollars easily accessible facilitated this rubbish of people stealing money and cutting it away. Unfortunately, the situation has not changed. The solutions which are being used to bring the convergence in inverted commas, because there is still no convergence. Indeed, in pursuit of convergence some years back, the CBN started selling these dollars to bureau de change, so things haven't changed. And indeed, they celebrated and said, oh, we have convergence. After selling $1 billion to each bureau de change, then of course the market was suffocated with dollars for some time. And they said, we had convergence, and they celebrated. But we know what has happened as a result of that. Today, you created an appetite for consciously creating an appetite for speculative tendencies within the market. A lot of people got money which they needed to carry away, and you had very many instances of people being arrested at the airport or detained at the airport for carrying millions of dollars at a time, because the facility made available for you to evacuate the money was very well implemented by the central bank. And then suddenly they came back and said, oh, look at it, there's speculation. Speculation? Wasn't that what you wanted in the first place if you started to sell dollars to bureau de change, and bureau de change had more dollars than even the real sector? There was a time, I think it was 2006, every month the bureau de change was being offered something close to about $3 million, whereas the real sector, within that period, January to September, I think 2008, was allocated only about $5 billion or thereabouts. So you can quickly or readily see where the interest of the central bank was and still is at the moment. The idea that you expect the CBN convergence theory or convergence strategy to ever be meaningful is far-fetched, because you find that at the end of the day, the Naira rate is determined within a market that has Naira and dollar. Unfortunately, you are all led to, I mean, you all are led to believe, to believe that the problem is the dollar supply. It is not dollar supply, surely, because when you had $60 billion in reserves, your best ever reserves, think about this very clearly. Your exchange rate increased or improved by 150, from 153 to 155 Naira, or thereabouts. Meanwhile, you've had your best ever reserves. But then, when you had a situation where the crude oil prices dipped, immediately your exchange rate started cascading. The reality, of course, is that the issue is that of the supply of the Naira rather than the supply of the dollar. If you have a market space where within that market space you have a room full of Naira, and somebody who is supposed to be the custodian, the owner, the generalissimo, as I've said, of the Naira, decides that the best thing to do would be to take rations of dollars and auction.
You are referring to the CBN now?
Oh, this is the only person, there's the monopoly in the matter. The CBN has a stranglehold monopoly on the foreign exchange market and won't let go for reasons best known to itself. This monopoly, any monopoly indeed, distorts the resource allocation within any country. You'll find that prices will become arbitrary. You'll find that there will be multiple price range within the system because the monopolies can decide who he will sell at this price and that price and that price too. So consequently, you find that if, I want you to think about this very seriously because this is at the bottom of the whole thing. If you auction anything, you want to auction your phone, you would sell to the highest bidder or to the higher bidder. That makes sense, doesn't it? Right. Yeah. So when the custodian, the generalissimo of the Naira decides to be auctioning rations of dollars in a room that is suffocated with Naira, it means that that generalissimo of the Naira is betting against its own currency. Because when you put the rations of dollars in the market, you don't sell to Henry Boyo who says, look, I can only pay 10 Naira per dollar. You'd want to sell to whoever pays 300, 400 or whatever. And you are supposed to be in charge of the Naira. You are supposed to ensure that the Naira retains a positive purchasing value. But you are actually betting against the Naira. And everybody, including you girls and you guys, you believe that this is wonderful. Because whenever you announce these reports of what central bank is doing, you expose your ignorance. You expose your ignorance because you tend to how do I say it? Advertise a strategy that is so destructive to you and me.
Okay.
How can you have a situation, how can you keep quiet when the person or the agency of government that's supposed to protect the Naira is openly, brazenly abusing the Naira in your presence, and you, the reporters, report it as a very benign outcome?
Let me come in from this angle. Now, so much money has been spent in defending the Naira.
Defending the dollar, you mean?
Well,
no, truly, I mean that.
I know,
defending
I know
the
the angle you're coming from, but the CBN says they're
defending. No. You don't have to believe what the CBN says. You have to use your own head and determine. If somebody, as I've told you, you say you are auctioning the dollar against the Naira, you are betting against, and then you come back and tell people like you, I'm defending the Naira, and you believe it, and you come and announce every evening, oh, the CBN is defending the Naira.
According to them.
Dude, if they lie to you, must you accept their lie? No, truly, I mean,
okay.
So someone, let me tell you something. Does it not make sense what I'm saying?
Yeah, it does.
Yeah, because you cannot bet against your own currency, but you watch the CBN doing this on a regular, constant basis, and it doesn't hurt you. And you say, oh, we are suffering in this country. The policy that is killing the country is the mismanagement of money supply, what they call excess liquidity. You are sitting here, you would announce sometime this week that the CBN is mopping up excess liquidity.
Now, this move made by the CBN, do you think it's a long-term goal, short-term goal?
The CBN doesn't have your interest at heart.
I do understand where you're coming from, but my question is...
But I don't understand where you're coming from. Truly, no, because this is logical. I mean, so but you don't make up stories.
No, according to what the CBN says, No, I'm just telling you, I'm coming from their angle. You told me what you believe, but the CBN is saying something. Now they're saying, oh, according to them, this move we're doing is defending the Naira. That's according to the CBN.
What does your common sense say? From what I've said.
I'm asking a question.
No, truly, no. You're a Nigerian, I'm a Nigerian. We all sink or swim together.
Yes.
Okay? So don't say CBN. CBN has no, how do I say, authority or over wisdom.
We've seen bad policies towards defending the Naira in the past.
I'm telling you that they're defending the dollar. How can they be how can you say they're defending the Naira when they are auctioning rations of dollars in a market that is undeniably suffocated with? This is not speculation now, this is reality.
I do understand what you're saying.
I'm saying interpret
I'm trying
the
to ask
actions.
the question being politically correct. That's what I'm trying to do.
It is not politically correct.
Okay,
it is not even technically correct. It is an abuse of our intelligence.
All right, let's deal with something which you pointed out earlier on, the excess liquidity problem.
Thank you.
Excess liquidity in the banking sector. So this is the way the CBN wants to deal with the problem, by mopping up the money, the excess money, and then selling treasuries and bond. One of the major reasons they say is to fight inflationary pressure. Inflation having to deal with the exchange rate also to the, this is what the issues they're looking at and saying if they can deal with the problems in this sort of way. But tell me exactly how to deal with this, because it does appear that inflation still hasn't dropped despite the fact
it will never drop.
Right.
Because you really don't understand what excess liquidity means. And I say this with all sincerity and humility. I'm not trying to put you down or anything like that, but if it shakes you up to make you think, then I have no regrets whatsoever. Excess liquidity means there is surplus supply of money, of Naira within the system, okay? The surplus supply of Naira, the fear is that it will drive inflation beyond, if it is not already beyond the normal, because sensible, focused, responsible economies, successful economies elsewhere, inflation is never more than 2%, 3% maybe, okay? When you have inflation at 20% or thereabouts, you lose the purchasing power of your income. When that happens across the board, people cannot buy what they used to buy. Excuse me.
Sorry.
If people cannot buy the amount of gari or the amount of bread or whatever they used to buy, they cut down. When they cut down, this has an adverse impact on the people who produce these things. They lay out there. So you can see that excess liquidity as a driver of inflation is the main cause of our problems, because excess liquidity drives inflation, and inflation drives the cost of funds. Because if you expect that I will lend you money when inflation is 20%, for example, and you ask me to lend money to you at 10% or whatever, I'm a fool, because the 20% inflation, by the time you pay me 110, for that reason, inflation is the driver of cost of funds, because cost of funds will never be or should never be under inflation. So consequently, so long as you have inflation trending towards 20%, you can never expect your so-called dream of diversification of the country.
Let me bring you back a little bit on the excess liquidity question. So we can establish that we have excess liquidity as a problem in this the banking sector. Maybe the economy is a matter of conjecture. But tell me, do you think, first and foremost, what has caused excess liquidity in the Nigerian banking sector?
Well, I think your first question was right, the evidence of excess liquidity. This is why I say you read the news without even understanding what you're doing. The evidence is thrown in your face on a daily basis. If there was no problem with excess supply of money, the CBN would not need to borrow the money out of the system. And so far as they have continued to do so for donkey years, it means that the burden of surplus Naira is there, appears to be persistent. And as I say, excess Naira supply chasing less productivity or less number of goods will drive inflation. So long as you continue to have this imbalance between excess supply of Naira within the system, which is undeniable, it is not a conjecture, because it is real. The central bank would unless you believe that what you're reading is not true. Every time the central bank mopping up excess liquidity, if the surplus was not there, it would not be mopped up in the first place. Okay? So the issue is not conjecture. This is the actual. So you find a situation where they are continuously mopping up excess liquidity to prevent you and me and Silverbird and everybody who needs loan to be able to do something, to prevent them from accessing those loans, because they know it is crazy for you to go borrow at 25% or thereabouts and say you want to set up an industry. You have a rope on your neck. So you have a situation where if you cannot bring down inflation, cost of funds cannot be brought down. So it becomes even farcical when the issue is that of excess naira supply. Forever, what the Yorubas call agbonmagbe, you don't wonder where the thing is being replenished from. So long as you have that burden of excess liquidity, you will always have a situation where inflation appears to be running ahead. In order to rein in inflation, the central bank would sell treasury bills or borrow the money. And borrow the money, by the way, not to repair your roads, not to build new schools, not to have comprehensive health facilities, not to do anything positive to you, only to sterilize the money, because the fear is that if we left this money within the system, the rate of inflation would even go higher than 20%. So the first fear of any sensible government is inflation. But back to your question, how does excess liquidity come about, eternally come about in Nigeria? The answer is very simple, because the CBN has taken upon itself to be a main defender of the dollar. It becomes impossible for it to really relinquish a stranglehold monopoly on anybody who sells 80% of anything in the market is a monopolist, surely. Can determine the prices, can say for you, traveler to Jerusalem or Mecca, you get less, for petrol you get less. You can decide because it's a monopolist, okay? Right. The point is, have you ever asked, first let me ask you the question. You know we have 30 billion or thereabouts reserves. Does it make sense for you to have $30 billion sitting somewhere and then for you to say, no, that's for central bank to defend the dollar? I beg your pardon, defend the naira.
Let's always put that in perspective.
Meanwhile, it is better for me to go borrow $500 million from those, to be midwife by those banks where central bank is keeping their $30 billion. Are we not stark raving?
Okay. Let me bring it to a point where analysts, economists, of course, people would always differ on their views on these issues, and then let me bring it to on all
lawyers,
issues
engineers,
in life.
so it's
yes,
not specific
good.
to them.
Now, coming to the issues that led to the policies that we see, particularly the injection of the foreign exchange by the CBN into the market, was the fact that industries were affected. This brings us to the argument of the LCCI complaining about certain production activities that would see a decline over the forex issues on the 41 items that were banned. Now, let's come to the fact that they were responding to, according to them, some specifics that needed to be dealt with. If you were the CBN governor, I don't mean that you are, but then if you were in his shoes at that time, that the dollars were needed to revive certain sectors, what would you have done? I would never
do such a foolish thing.
What would you have done?
I would never do such a foolish thing. I would identify the cause of the problem and direct my energy towards that. And as I've told you, no matter what permutations you make or CBN makes, so long as that market paradigm exists where the CBN itself is auctioning rations of dollars. You have to take this very seriously. It's not just Henry Boyer said this. I want you to think about it. You cannot run away from the position, the situation in which we find ourselves now, so long as the CBN, I don't know whether you understand what I mean, CBN stranglehold monopoly on the foreign exchange market. They are the only people, they decide what the price would be. Whereas, I'm surprised you're not even wondering, I haven't answered the question about, how does the excess liquidity, but we're getting there. You find that, ask yourself, how does CBN accumulate its dollar reserves? What work does it do? What business does it do to accumulate $30 billion worth of reserves? The truth is, they capture your dollar reserves. They capture your dollar earnings and print naira and give to you. It is the process that creates excess liquidity.
Yeah, that's what I was getting to. So,
Okay,
yeah, right.
and the excess liquidity situation is worsened, deliberately worsened, by adopting cash reserve requirements that are provocative. You have a situation where you think excess supply of money is the problem, and that is driving inflation, and inflation is driving the cost of funds, and all two together is driving your low rate of Naira exchange. What you should do is ask yourself, where does this excess Naira come from? And surely, you know that 80% or 70% of income, total income in this country, comes from crude oil, which comes in dollars. Have you ever asked yourself, where are the dollars? Because CBN quietly takes the dollars and prints Naira and gives to the 3 tiers of government. And then also institutes or adopts a cash reserve ratio that makes it possible that apart from pushing in more Naira each time you earn dollars, that is why when you had $60 billion, the CBN had already, a priori, suffocated the system with the equivalent of printed Naira while they have the $60 billion. That is why the CBN can claim that the reserves are mine, because they have given you Naira and the Mugu has taken the Naira and spent it. So how can you return and say, I also own the dollars? Because don't you think it's crazy for us to have $30 billion and for CBN to go to, for the federal government to be looking for $500 million? And you say, leave that alone. Don't worry, Mr. Boyo. They are defending the Naira.
What you have described is a problem with the way the system is running. What should it be?
Thank you. Very simple. Take away the stranglehold monopoly. What does that mean? CBN does not have the right to capture the dollars. Let them, when they pay in the monthly allocations, the percentage of it that is dollar derived, let them give dollar denominated checks to the 3 tiers of government, not cash. They cannot take the cash and run away. In fact, the system now, the reason why they won't adopt what I'm saying is that they won't allow you to take the cash and run away. But this system encourages, promotes you looting the system and carrying the money away. But if you have a situation where you now give dollar checks to everybody, you haven't created additional Naira liquidity, what happens is that you suddenly find that there is a shift in the market paradigm. You don't have rations of dollars in the market anymore facing copious Naira suffocation in the system. You now have what? An almost equal balance.
But we say that the legal tender in Nigeria is Naira.
I haven't said you should spend dollars.
So the checks will be cashed in
Naira. Simple. In the banks. But the banks won't like that. Because why? It will deprive them of almost 600 billion Naira a year that they make from CBN borrowing money. It doesn't
Boyo,
need
sorry, let me
with treasury
quickly,
bills.
I apologize for this.
This
But
is
if you
serious.
Say, okay, if you say that all the issues that you have highlighted with excess liquidity and the way and manner that you propose that the dollar checks be issued to the 3 tiers of government, knowing how our federal allocation money comes from crude oil, obviously dollars. So if all these policies are hurting the system, I'm wondering just when we'll realize how bad this is, and then what the duty of the CBN is in this regard. I would think the interest of the economy first and foremost.
That's why I said the CBN doesn't have your interest at heart. No, let's be honest with ourselves here. The CBN doesn't have your interest at heart. Otherwise, they would do what is sensible. It doesn't make sense for you as CBN, the custodian of the Naira, to bet against your own currency. If they have your interest at heart, they wouldn't do so. But you cannot deny from the market paradigm I have explained, and which is real, because is it not true that the CBN auctions dollars? Yes. Is it not true that there's excess liquidity or excess Naira supply within the market? Yes. Is it not true that it's only rations that they keep putting into the market? Yes. Is it not true that if you have rations of one item against a suffocation or a surplus of the other, the one that is rationed will be more expensive? Yes. So what is that? That's not big argument. This is not rocket science, surely. You know, but the reality is that you have so much faith and confidence that the CBN is taking care of your back. They're not doing that. They're looking after their own interests. That's why they have $30 billion worth of reserves, and you have to go and borrow 500 million elsewhere. Does it make sense?
forward to the next conversation.
So really, the CBN has been busy defending the dollar. But if you sell propaganda long enough, the people who are being oppressed will even praise you and say you are doing wonderful work.
Bringing the discussion to a close, let's look at this. I remember when this onslaught, this David versus Goliath, Naira versus dollar battle began, and Naira began to take a slide and headed south. And then in recent times, we've had interventions, the CBN, millions of dollars been pumped into the market, and they say that is responsible for the Naira gaining between 370, 380, 390 at the parallel market. You were quoted at one point saying that if the CBN doesn't do the job well, you could see the Naira exchange the greenback for 1,000 Naira to the dollar before the end of this year. You think what the CBN is doing presently can sustain?
Look, the CBN is not doing anything new than what they do all the time. You know, at the time we had too much dollars, okay? They put it this way, they consciously, together with the fiscal authorities, they deliberately created a situation where there was so much Naira within the system, you know, and CBN did the same thing it's doing now, decided to throw money. For example, in 2008, between October and November 2008, you found that they sold $7 billion within 2 months. Whereas throughout the whole year, they had only sold $5-point-something billion for a very simple reason. At the end of the year, if you have ever been in government, they try to spend all the money at once. And for some reason or the other, the executive said, look, whether it's possible to implement your budget or not, all monies which have been allocated should be released. And they released that amount of money, such amount of money, a huge amount of money between October and November 2008. And then the CBN suddenly found, and the cash reserve ratio was also very high, so liquidity surplus was there, and nobody knew what to do with this money. They decided that we will buy dollars with it and keep. And then suddenly they found that the demand for dollars had skyrocketed, and within 2 months they sold $7 billion. The same thing is happening now. They are throwing money at it. That is not the solution. I have told you that the solution is the CBN must withdraw its hand from the stranglehold monopoly of the on the dollar market, such that everyone who has dollars can go exchange through the banking system where no new additional Naira liquidity has been pumped. Does it make sense? Do you feel proud as a Nigerian that your own central bank is, for example, in 2015 December, the central bank came up with a plan that they were going to mop up 6 trillion Naira from the system in 2016. Meanwhile, what was the total budget of the federal government? 6 trillion Naira. So while the federal government is planning, we are going to bring 6 trillion, and you guys are saying, there's going to be better this time because they're going to spend trillion. CBN is sitting there, we are going to borrow that 6 trillion back. And they actually did. So they know they are counting on your, how would I say it? Ignorance is a bad word, but they are counting on your ignorance. That you can't see these things because what they are doing is not new. This is reality. Take it all. Look, if you think what I'm saying is wrong, tell me at what point what I've said is wrong.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Boyo. Whether the question is erroneous or intentional?
Sorry?
Is it erroneous or intentional?
Put it this way. They can't be so foolish. So it cannot be erroneous.
Okay.
Since we're all broadcasters,
we leave it at that. Henry Olujibiboye, economist as well as columnist, is also a journalist. Several years, I guess the way you get grilled also to your columns every time it goes out in the national dailies. Thank you very much for coming on the show for your frank and candid opinion on Nigeria's economic prescriptions and interventions. Thank you very much, sir, for coming.
And thank you all for watching, and enjoy us again tomorrow. See you tomorrow.